Oil prices are dropping all over the world, which is having a huge effect on the economy. Republican leaders met at the Iowa Summit last week, and world leaders met at the World Economic Forum. And we sat down with Dan Pacheco, the chair of journalism and innovation at the Newhouse School, to talk about virtual reality. All of that and more coming up on Talking Points. Good evening and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Max Darrow. Thank you for joining us. Before we start tonight, let's take a look at some of the top news stories of the week. New Englanders are working to clear away snow after a massive snowstorm this week. Nor'easter Juno dropped as much as 2.5 feet in some places. 7 states declared states of emergency in preparation for the storm, and thousands of flights and trains were canceled. Officials imposed travel bans in New York State and across the region. And the far-left party that took control of Greece in elections last week is trying to renegotiate Greece's debt to the European Union. The EU gave Greece $270 billion in bailout money in 2010. Now the Syriza party, which just took power, is asking the EU to forgive portions of its debt from that deal. Markets across Europe have been reacting to the situation. Also, 2 Israeli soldiers were killed in an attack by Hezbollah this week. The soldiers were killed when the militant group based in Lebanon fired on a convoy on an Israel-occupied area on the Lebanon border. Israeli forces responded with fire on villages in southern Lebanon. The original attack was in retaliation for an Israeli attack on the Golan Heights that killed senior Hezbollah officials. Hezbollah passed a message to Israeli officials through UN peacekeeping forces saying that they do not want further escalation. Those are the top talking points for the week. We'll get the discussion started right after the break. Don't go anywhere.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. Stop the texts. Stop the wrecks. Visit us at stoptextsstopwrecks.org.
Turning a 20-foot wall into a canvas takes vision. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Today, about 1 in 5 Americans is living with a disability. Over 50 million people, including many of our friends and neighbors, teachers and co-workers, heroes and leaders. 20 years ago, the Americans with Disabilities Act guaranteed every person the right to live, work, and participate fully in the American experience. We've come a long way since then, and we are committed to making even more progress in the years ahead. Visit disability.gov to see how you can help.
Cocina a la temperatura adecuada usando un termómetro para alimentos. Mantén tu familia a salvo. Visita foodsafety.gov/español.
You realize that 49 million Americans struggle with hunger? That's 1 out of every 6 Americans.
These people are around us every day. They're our friends, they're our coworkers, their kids go to school with our kids.
Sometimes we're not even aware that they're struggling. This problem is closer than you think. But so is the solution.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Now, oil prices are dropping around the world, and Talking Points correspondents Josh Carney and Jonathan Owens are here to talk about what this has meant for markets here at home as well as around the globe. Josh, John, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having us, Max.
So, Josh, I'm going to start internationally with you. A lot of time we think about the Organization of Petroleum exporting countries such as Iraq, Saudi Arabia. However, other countries have oil affecting their economies. How are the lower oil prices affecting economies in some of these non-OPEC nations?
Right, a lot of times people just consider the OPEC nations. However, other countries such as Canada also has a large portion of its economy affected by oil. And now that a lot of the oil prices around the world are going down, Canada's going to have billions of dollars less in their Federal Reserve than they originally expected. They originally expected around $6 billion more than they're going to have now. And this is according to a former Finance Canada official, Peter DeVries. And however, despite all the less money that they're going to have in the Federal Reserves, they're still not planning on doing any spending cuts. They're going to have to find money elsewhere to balance the budget. And their GDP is only expected to grow at a rate of 1.1%, rather than the estimated 3.7%. And all this is assuming that the oil prices will average around $47 a barrel.
Okay, and now, how are these lower oil prices going to affect the war with ISIS?
That's another interesting point, because all these falling prices affect the 5 Arab nations that are helping the U.S. and other countries fight off ISIS in that region. And some of the countries such as the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar all have said that their budgets will be constrained with oil prices being down. And Iraq, for example, which is where ISIS is holding a vast majority of, is hoping that there will be no reversal of the military victory due to budget and fiscal problems. And their economy is 85% funded by energy exports. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. And so this will definitely put a damper potentially on the fight to eradicate ISIS out of that region.
All right, my last question for you. What's going to happen in Saudi Arabia with the new leadership and its oil production?
Right, now that there's a new king, King Salman in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has maintained, though, that its production level of oil in recent months is going to be maintained. And this is in hopes that the market share and the force, and this is to help make sure that the market share is going to stay the same. And this is also in hopes that it's going to force out higher priced producers in North America, for example. However, the country's new leader, like I said, King Salman, said that he is expected to face pressure to slash production, but at this point in time, he's not expected to slash any production.
Okay, John, we're talking international issues. Now we're going to go over to Josh Carney. We're going to talk domestic issues. Who stands to benefit from the decline of oil prices in the United States?
Well, those that are going to benefit most are going to be the American people. According to the United States Energy Information Administration, Americans are going to spend $750 less at the pump this year, which is equivalent to a significant tax break. It's going to be mostly on the major level, the macro level, at which major energy companies as well as international states are going to lose.
Flipping to the other side of the coin, who stands to lose?
Well, much like the states internationally that stand to lose, it's going to be the states domestically that stand to lose. Those that are built solely on their oil companies and how oil rich they are. Specifically looking at Texas, Alaska, North Dakota, where there's a shale boom, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. If you look specifically to Alaska, 90% of their tax base comes from oil companies and their taxes. That means that a spending operational budget of $6.1 billion is going to shrink to half because oil, the price of a barrel, has dropped from 110 to 50. Now, this is substantial and is definitely going to impact the spending budgets across the nation and will have a dramatic impact on how states will be able to function in the coming year.
So before we switch gears, is there anything else you'd like to add about just the decline of oil prices here in the U.S.?
Well, the decline of oil prices, not only here in the U.S., but internationally, reflect a significant drop in which the price of oil since June of 2014 has fell over 59%, according to the Wall Street Journal. And that is going to hinder energy markets in general, in which energy companies are going to take the brunt of this storm, but it's certainly going to benefit consumers.
Last question, and it's a quick one, I'm sorry, but we're talking oil, we're talking energy. How does Keystone fall into all of this?
The Keystone Pipeline has a bunch of preconceived notions that many don't really even understand. It's a major highway, essentially, in terms of a pipeline that will run from the Alberta, Canada, tar sands all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, there are going to be other pipes that link up to this, but there's a tremendous amount of environmental concern, what it means for us taking dirty oil that will burn and cause a huge amount of greenhouse gases to be emitted and bringing that into international markets by transporting it all the way to the Gulf. Ultimately, those on one side are saying that it's a huge job creator, but according to CNN, those that say it's a huge job creator are claiming that it can create over 42,000 jobs holistically throughout the process, but it will only establish an estimated 50 permanent jobs. So therefore, it's not a major job creator, which is one of the main motives for attracting to this project, and it's also going to have a significant environmental impact both in the immediate area and what it says about the United States environmental policy.
Josh Carney, Jonathan Owens, thank you so much for your time tonight. When we come back, Talking Points domestic correspondent Topher Lane will give us a recap of the Iowa Summit, and our science correspondent Sawyer Rosenstein sat down with Dan Pacheco of the Newhouse School to talk about a hot topic in technology. Stay tuned.
You didn't give up on sex. Don't give up on birth control either. There are more methods than you think. Find yours at bedsider.org.
Learning how to kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Today, about 1 in 5 Americans is living with a disability. Over 50 million people, including many of our friends and neighbors, teachers and co-workers, heroes and leaders. 20 years ago, the Americans with Disabilities Act guaranteed every person the right to live, work, and participate fully in the American experience. We've come a long way since then, and we are committed to making even more progress in the years ahead. Visit disability.gov to see how you can help.
Welcome back to Talking Points. The GOP Iowa Summit this past weekend saw many Republicans vying for the 2016 presidential bid. Familiar faces like Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, and even Sarah Palin spoke at the summit. Newer faces like Ben Carson or former HP CEO Carly Fiorina also made their appearance. While there was some variety and nuances in each speaker's words, each took an opportunity to take shots at President Obama and his administration, as well as the Democratic Party as a whole. Many of the politicians' promises were made to repeal the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. Some speakers, like Ted Cruz, even raised the idea of abolishing the IRS. Ted Cruz also said that every politician chasing a nomination is claiming to be the most conservative, but urged voters to seek proof. Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey, and also a more moderate Republican, caught a lot of attention. While he stood strong against abortion, he also urged that the Republican Party doesn't need to do anything to continue to aid the rich, and they should instead refocus their efforts on the middle class. Governor Christie, known for being more moderate, was still able to turn some heads at the summit with his speaking. Christie proudly made an appearance at the summit, but some big names were not in attendance. Among those not at the summit were former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, 2012 GOP presidential nominee Mitt Romney, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, and Florida Senator Marco Rubio. In their absence, multi-billionaire businessman Donald Trump took the opportunity to trash talk both Bush and Romney, saying there was just no way either of them would win in 2016. And now, Talking Points science correspondent Sawyer Rosenstein sat down with the Newhouse School's Dan Pacheco to talk about virtual reality. Sawyer?
Thanks, Topher. I'm here with Professor Dan Pacheco, who is the chairman of the Horvitz Chair. The Horvitz Chair of Journalism and Innovation at the Newhouse School at Syracuse University, and he's also a professor there. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thanks, Sawyer.
So part of the amazing things that you're doing there, one of the amazing things, is virtual reality. How has virtual reality changed from the days when you think about it back in the arcades with the giant bulky headsets and things like that?
Yeah, well, they're a lot smaller now. So this one just came out from Samsung, and they use phones. So basically, so there's a few things that come together with virtual reality that basically trick your brain into thinking you're somewhere else, which is really what we should think about it as. And one of those is just screen quality, right? So if you look at the quality of screens on tablets and phones, they've gotten better and better and better, right? Back in the 90s, when the first VR headsets came out, it wasn't anywhere near that. It was like maybe VGA quality, if you remember that. And so things didn't look quite so realistic. Another thing that's changed, also thanks to cell phone technology, is the sensors that called accelerometers, that can tell where you are in physical space, are incredibly accurate, so that if you were actually to hold a phone up, and there used to be some apps in the Apple App Store, there were augmented reality apps. One was called Layer, a few years back, and with that you could hold your phone up and you'd see through your camera other places, that the camera could see, but then other information layer on top of it. And so you then move your phone around, and it can tell exactly which direction you're looking. Now that technology is being put into these VR headsets, which then they combine the accelerometers that give you the head tracking, so that when you put this on and you're looking at a video of, say, Venice or skydiving or whatever it happens to be, if you look to your left and you just make very slight movements, it feels real. It feels like you are somewhere else. You have that full 360 sensation.
Right. Along those lines, Microsoft just announced the HoloLens, which is
Yes.
augmented reality, where it supplements graphics into the real world. People are complaining that technology is taking us out of the real world. So do you think this is helpful or hurtful?
The HoloLens?
Yes, augmented reality.
Yeah, I think, so virtual reality and augmented reality are really cousins, and I think that they're both important. Of course, Google Glass was really the first to really make a major foray into augmented reality, and it was version 1.0 was never the best, right? First is often not best, although I think with Oculus it is best at this point. So what HoloLens does is it's like Google Glass combined with the Oculus Rift in a way, so that you're seeing three-dimensional virtual objects superimposed inside physical space. That's really exciting. I mean, if you look at the demos they have, and our alum Larry Herb tells me that this is really what it's like, and hopefully we'll get to try it pretty soon. I could be looking right back here, and there would be a flat screen TV playing Netflix, and it would look like there's really a screen there. I could look over here, and there could be a whale flying through, like swimming through the air. There's another company called Magic Leap that is doing something, or planning to do something similar. Google, I think, gave them somewhere north of $250 million in seed funding, and then Andreessen Horowitz got involved as well. So this is all going to be a part of our world, right? Both VR and AR. And I also don't think that, I think it's a mistake to think that virtual reality is about taking you out of the world. As you're going to see in a second here, it's possible now with 360 video to really bridge the divides between peoples, different cultures, different places. And we're not that far from being able to put a 360-degree camera on the other side of the world and then let you tune into it and feel like you're being physically transported somewhere else.
That's amazing. We'll have to take a look at that on the online extra. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us here on Talking Points.
You're welcome.
Check out.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll be sitting down with Talking Points correspondent Mike Riccardi to discuss the World Economic Forum. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, I'm Anderson Cooper. As a parent, you want to make sure that your child knows how to deal with bullying when they see it happening. And chances are they want to help, but they don't really know how. Well, teach them that the best thing to do is calmly walk away, find a teacher or other adult, and speak up. And do your part. Be that adult they can talk to and trust will listen. Join me to help stop bullying. Go to stopbullying.gov to find out more.
Learning how to kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
20 years ago, the Americans with Disabilities Act guaranteed every person the right to live, work, and participate fully in the American experience. We've come a long way since then, and we are committed to making even more progress in the years ahead.
So, I just moved in with his family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
And welcome back to Talking Points. Now, leaders from around the world met in Switzerland to talk about economic issues. Talking Points correspondent Mike Riccardi is here to tell us more about what they've decided. Mike, good evening.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, just quickly give us a brief overview of the discussions that happened at the forum.
So, Oxfam released a report that basically said that by next year, the top 1% wealthiest people in the entire world will own the same amount of wealth as the bottom 99% of people in the entire world.
It's a stunning statistic.
And yeah, it is. And basically, this is not looking good. A lot of economists are saying that this is very bad for long-term economic growth, and others are saying that it's going to be the cause of civil unrest in the future. So that's one thing they're trying to change. And another thing to note is the top 80 people, the top 80 wealthiest people in the entire world own $1.9 trillion, which is the same amount as the bottom 3.5 billion.
So you brought up wealth inequality. Is there any solution that was discussed at the summit?
Yeah, so the WEF came out with a 14-point plan. They haven't named all 14 points yet, but they have named 6 sort of pillars of things they want to achieve, and those include education and skills, employment and labor, asset building and business investment, corruption and rents, fiscal transfers, and basic services and infrastructure. So those will be some of the key things that they'll try to hit in order to kind of reverse this cycle of growing wealth gap.
Okay. Now, moving over to other topics such as climate change, I know we were talking about some in-depth statistics earlier. Would you mind going over those with our viewers?
Yeah, so I'm going to preface that first by mentioning the Live Earth climate change concert that was announced by Al Gore and Pharrell Williams. And basically, this is going to take place in June on all 7 continents. They will have a group of researchers performing in Antarctica to make that come true, and it's going to be in all other 6 continents and cities, including New York, Paris, Rio de Janeiro, Cape Town, Sydney, Australia, and a city in China yet to be named. They're trying to put pressure on the world leaders that are involved in the UN Climate Pact, and those talks are going to be ending in December. So they're trying to do this now before that ends up happening. And also, after the end of the concert, there's going to be an online petition, and their goal is to get 1 billion signatures to demand climate action now.
Okay. So I guess climate and energy tie together. What is the African Energy Leaders Group, and what are they trying to achieve?
So the African Energy Leaders Group was started by billionaires Tony Elumelu and Aliko Dangote, and they're basically trying to find better ways to solve Africa's energy solutions. Right now, 620 million people in Africa live without electricity every day. So they're trying to do things in order to stop that, and it includes a whole plethora of things.
Okay, now moving back to inequality, some comments on inequality were on display at the forum. Are there any merit? Is there any merit behind them?
There actually, I mean, it depends on how serious you want to take it, but there is, because they had 1,700 private jets flying world leaders into Davos, which is a small, cold town with a ski resort, and basically, you know, they have all these heating costs and they're creating air traffic jams. And their 2 big issues at the summit were climate change and wealth inequality. And here they are flying in on a big private jet.
So, private jets and climate change at an inequality summit. How do these jets get factored into the climate change argument?
Well, they're releasing carbon emissions into the atmosphere. And one of the big statistics that came out during the summits were that they want to limit the global warming to 2 degrees over Fahrenheit over pre-industrial levels. And scientists right now are saying that we're on track to get to 4 degrees Fahrenheit over the pre-industrial levels by the end of the century. Scientists are saying that this is going to be leading to all sorts of droughts and flooding and major storms. And actually, Jim Yong Kim, the co-chair of the WEF, had this to say. He basically said, with an aggressive move towards clean transport and greater energy efficiency policies, we could boost the global economy by up to 1.8 trillion to 2.6 trillion per year. So it both works on the economic level and the climate change level.
Mike Riccardi, thanks so much for being with us. And now we'll go to Talking Points correspondent Nick Papantonis to talk about the Chinese military.
Thanks, Max. When Chinese President Xi Jinping first began his corruption crackdown last year, he promised to go after everyone. Former members of his government who were once considered untouchable are now under scrutiny. Recently, the crackdown is extended to China's military, who announced that 16 high-ranking officers were under investigation. At the forefront is Xu Zaiho, China's former top general. Xu was stripped of his rank and title after decades of selling promotions for cash, a practice that found its way to all ranks of the military. When he was finally arrested last year, officials filled 12 trucks with the money he made from bribes and took a week to count it. So why the sudden publicity in a system known for its secrecy? Experts on China believe that there were a mix of reasons. It's well known that Xu had connections to former presidents and many supporters in powerful positions, and by taking down a threat, Xi solidified his role at the top. Just yesterday, the party sent a notice to military officials to resolutely obey Xi's commands. The more pressing concern is that this crackdown is a part of China's military buildup. The country is involved in multiple disputes with neighbors over a series of strategic island chains in the South China Sea, which are also home to valuable resources. In addition to new technology and increased funding, China has been building man-made islands and army bases in the region to assert its control. The country has become increasingly aggressive, forcing the Pentagon to halt further deals until an agreement over behavior can be struck. Chinese officials worry that because of corruption, there aren't enough decent officers in the upper ranks to win a war, a serious issue in a country that aims to project strength in a new world dynamic.
So Nick, thank you for that update. My question to you is, how will this affect America?
So most of those allies that we have over in East Asia are actually the ones that China has the disputes over the islands with. So with the addition that China is America's biggest trading partner and the military buildup, American interests are actually at increased risk if China decides to pursue a path of war with these nations.
Nick Papantonis, thanks so much. And in our final segment, we will be talking about the Middle East. Don't go anywhere.
You didn't give up on sex. Don't give up on birth control either. There are more methods than you think. Find yours at bedsider.org.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. Stop the texts. Stop the wrecks. Visit us at stoptextsstopwrecks.org.
We are different. Society should aspire to be more like us.
Be part of the first class. Get energized. Get outside.
Hold on, guys. It's gonna get bumpy.
And get moving. Experience the power of physical activity. Join the movement at ActionHeroAlliance.com.
So, I just moved in with his family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
And now we'll be taking our final segment of the show to the Middle East. ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. It's been very hard to keep up with what's been going on with ISIS, as we'll call it tonight, in the Middle East. Frankly, there's just so much information coming from so many different places that it's difficult to figure out what is true and what isn't true. But here's what we have as of today. The deadline for the proposed prisoner swap passed today. The original proposal had Jordan set free longtime prisoner and convicted terrorist Sajida al-Rishwani. In exchange, ISIS would spare Kenji Goto and Moaz al-Qasasbeh their lives. For some background, last week the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant took 2 Japanese men hostage and demanded $200 million. Days later, they allegedly beheaded one of those men, Haruna Yukawa. According to ISIS media, he was killed because Japanese leaders did not pay the bounty. However, after Yukawa was killed, ISIS changed its demand, a prisoner swap. ISIS captured a Jordanian military pilot, Moaz al-Qasasbeh, last month after he was ejected from his F-16 while it was crashing. Al-Qasasbeh was taking part in a military airstrike near the quasi-ISIS capital in Syria. As noted earlier, the deadline for the prisoner swap has passed, and nobody knows what's happened to al-Rishawi, Goto, and al-Qasasbeh. speculation may arise, but it may be a while before anybody knows the truth. We'll have more updates on ISIS, and the conflict continues. And in case you missed it, just 3 days ago, ISIS militants had strong words for President Obama. Quote, "Know, O Obama, that we will reach America. Know that also we will cut off your head, and the White House will transform America into a Muslim province." That's all we have for you tonight. Thank you for joining us for Talking Points. I'm Max Darrow. Good night.